These notes cover Chapter 2, Section 2 of your text, going over the properties of water. To recap, oxygen and hydrogen combine to form water. Oxygen has 2 electrons in its inner shell and 6 electrons in its outer shell, whereas hydrogen has 1 electron in its single shell. Oxygen and hydrogen share electrons to satisfy their outer shell requirements, hydrogen wanting to have 2 and oxygen wanting to have 8. And since they can't wholly take those electrons from each other, they share them, satisfying all 3 atoms. This is called a covalent bond. And I am recapping this because the fact that the electrons are tending to hang out toward the oxygen side and not at the top of hydrogen causes oxygen to have a slightly negative charge and for hydrogen to have a slightly positive charge. And that's called polarity, and I'll come back to that. Water is the most important compound found in living things. It comprises anywhere between 50 and 75% of the human body. Infants are born with a higher water percentage, and obesity can significantly decrease the amount of water found in the body. I'm so sorry. I should probably zoom in. Water is water is necessary for and made from many chemical reactions in the body. For example, when you put amino acids together to make a protein in the body, water is made and released. Water has many special chemical properties that allow it to be so important in living organisms. Starting with the one that I talked about up above, water is polar. The electrons in a water molecule aren't exactly being shared equally. They are hanging out near the oxygen more than the 2 hydrogens. And this causes a polar molecule. And water molecules form hydrogen bonds with each other where the positive pole of one is attracted to the negative pole of another. They are weak and they can break and reform easily. Covalent bonds, on the other hand, are much stronger in water. Polar molecules dissolve ionic substances very well, like salts, and other polar substances. So water, because it dissolves substances very well, It is often called the universal solvent. Water resists temperature changes. Better than other liquids and other substances. This allows water to be a very good insulator and allows organisms to stay at a constant temperature easier. This is good for you as a living thing because it helps you to maintain homeostasis much easier with regards to thermoregulation. If you were made of gold, gold changes temperatures much easier than water. It takes water about 30 times longer to heat than gold. And so if you were made of gold and you went outside and it was 85 degrees, your body temperature would fluctuate very rapidly, and that would be very bad for cells. You know, aside from the philosophical idea of could you be made of gold, but we're just pretending. Being made of water allows you to resist changes in temperature with swings in the environment, which happen, allowing your body to maintain a constant temperature and stability. Now, water becomes less dense when it freezes, and it expands when it freezes. So, starting with the fact that it expands, if water expands when it freezes, it increases in volume. And that increase in volume causes it to have less density when it's frozen. This allows this allows ice to float on water. Now, that's really important in ecology because if, let's say, you have an aquatic ecosystem like a pond, ice freezes at the top, but all of your creatures can survive underneath. If water froze and sunk, ice would rapidly fill up the pond, and all of your organisms would be forced to the surface, which would probably kill them. And that obviously doesn't happen. So aquatic ecosystems definitely rely on the fact that ice expands when it freezes and therefore floats. Now, numerically why this happens, let's just do a little math on the side here. Let's do ice and let's do water. And let's pretend we have a gram of water and we have a gram of ice. Based on what I told you up above, ice increases in volume. And you might have remembered this little equation from maybe middle school or elementary school, D equals M over V. Density equals mass over volume. Well, you can't change the amount of mass. The mass doesn't change if you go from water to ice, but the volume changes. Ice takes up more volume. So let's say for the liquid water, you have 2 mLs. With ice, we have to increase that number. Let's just say it's 3 mLs. I'm making up numbers, but trust me on this. Well, just look at the math here. For water, your density would be 1/2, but your ice would be 1/3. 1/3 is less than 1/2. Therefore, ice is less dense than water. Therefore, ice would float on water because it has a lower density. Moving on. Polarity allows for properties of cohesion and adhesion. Now, what's cohesion? When water molecules stick together because of hydrogen bonding, that is called cohesion. There's supposed to be a dash there. Water molecules being attracted to other water molecules. Okay, remember that's a hydrogen bond. That is cohesion. And cohesion allows for what's called surface tension. Surface tension is when it looks like water has a skin, even though it doesn't really have a skin. Sometimes organisms like this water strider can actually sit on the surface of the water and not break the surface tension because of the actual structure of their insect legs. When water molecules stick to other molecules, that is called adhesion. And chromatography is due to the fact that water molecules are actually attracted to the molecules in a paper towel. They're attracted to the molecules in an ink. If you're trying to separate the pigments out in an ink in a chromatography. Adhesion is the fact that water molecules can also be attracted to other substances, not just water, because of their polarity. Lastly, cohesion and adhesion allow for water to crawl up small spaces or narrow tubes. And this is called capillary action. The narrower the tube, the greater the capillary action. And plants have really taken advantage of this. They want to draw water from the roots and bring it all the way to the leaves. And so they have evolved to have very, very, very narrow tubes in their stems, and it's called xylem. And xylem transports water. And because they have these very, very narrow microscopic tubes, water can travel very high up the tree. Part of that moving up is being pulled because of photosynthesis, but also part of it is capillary action. And there you have it. Those are the properties of water.